It feels good to be back for a Saturday podcast. Lots to catch up on this week, guys, as we have a whole nice little, I don't know what you call it, soup of news to get into, along with a lot of wrestling results, including last night's SmackDown and this past Wednesday's AEW Dynamite. Both WWE and AEW heading into big shows. WWE has Saturday night's main event and Survivor Series up on the horizon. AEW just wrapped up Wrestle Dream last Saturday, and now we're headed towards Full Gear, and we have matches pretty much being set up for all of these shows already. So we're going to talk about that and just a lot of kind of random wrestling news. Nothing earth-shattering, nothing crazy, no big top story that's been the talk of the wrestling world for the past week. Just a lot of kind of random stuff. We're going to open up with the Chris Jericho stuff. We've talked about Jericho over the past couple of weeks on the podcast and his rumored return to the WWE when his AEW contract is up in a couple of months. And we'll talk more about that because it is becoming more and more apparent that this is going to happen. I seriously doubt anything's going to fall through here and Jericho's going to go back to AEW. He's going to go to WWE, probably finish his career there and go into the Hall of Fame. So we'll talk all about that. We'll talk about the wild Andrade story that I don't believe for a minute, but we are going to talk about the possibility of him going back to the WWE as well. We're also going to have some news on Samantha Irving, along with Marco Stunt is back in the news. We also have some Swerve Strickland injury update news, some news on Candice LeRae, also a very wild Bray Wyatt and Charles Manson story, an update on what we talked about last week or the week before about the WWE AI hire. We'll talk about that. Also, WWE ticket prices, the ESPN WWE deal as it stands right now, and what the plans are for Braun Breaker into the future, because we were here on Monday night for a Raw review, and I was talking about how weird it was that they were not in the Battle Royal, Reed and Breaker. I understood why they weren't, because they weren't going to win it, but the storyline reason they gave on Raw was extremely lame to me. And we do have some news on Breaker and possibly when WWE does plan on making him a world champion, and it is probably going to be when they kind of originally planned to anyway, before Seth Rollins got hurt. So we'll talk about that. Also, we will talk last night's SmackDown big heel turn. Jade Cargill maybe is a changed woman now after that just unbelievably gnarly gash she has right across her forehead. She turns on Tiffany Stratton last night and gets a title shot on Saturday night's main event, and I'm almost certain we're going to see a title change there. So we'll run through the SNME card as it stands right now. Also, a lot going on in AEW land. I thought Dynamite was pretty good. We've got the women's tournament for the tag team titles. That bracket has been released. We'll talk about that. And already a big match or two kind of set, or at least penciled in, for Full Gear as we round out the end of the year in AEW. So we'll just kind of talk about what we missed in the past week or so. We were here on Monday night, like I said, for a Raw review, but we were not here last Saturday for a podcast because it was Wrestle Dream, and I even had to work, so I wasn't even here to watch Wrestle Dream. So I'm happy to be back here today for a podcast, and it should be a fun weekend coming up. So thank you to everyone who was here. Happy Saturday as usual to you. Do me a favor, smash that thumbs up button if you don't mind. You guys all know the drill. Subscribe if you're not. Memberships are open, so are Super Chats. We will get to all of them here today, and this will probably be about a 2-hour podcast that I have to head to work before I start my weekend. And in a minute, I will let you know, if you don't already, what watch-along we're going to be doing tomorrow. But let me just say hi to the few of you who are here in the chat already. We got Max Pokebra, Tatanani is here, Gilbert Arbalo. Good to see Nick Musser and Rodrigo, Mike Rouse in the hall. Renatal, how you doing? Finally able to listen live. That's awesome. Or Renatal. I don't know how you pronounce that. Good to see you. Mohammed, good to see you as well. We have Colin Wright, I think I saw. James Kowalski, what up? Last day of work before vacation. That's always nice, isn't it? It's a good feeling. Good to see David Brown. We got Danny in here as well. Michael Kumo in the house saying hello. Good to see everyone who is going to be stopping by today. Thank you so much for being here. And we will get moving here because I only have about 2 hours to fit this thing in, and then I got to head to work, and we do have a fair amount to talk about. But it is Halloween season, as you guys know, and we do classic watch-alongs every Sunday here on the channel, but we have already gotten to just about all of the Halloween Havocs. We're only missing 3 of them. I think 89, 90, and 92, and 2000. So we're missing like 4 that we haven't done, but we've done all the 90s. We've done all the good ones. So I was looking at the ones that was left, and I'm like, tomorrow we got to do a Halloween Havoc watch along. And between the ones that are left, I think the one we should watch is the very first one. We're going way back to when I was 12, which means if I was 12, most of you weren't born. Maybe a couple of you were, but we're going back to me being 12 years old, Halloween Havoc 1989. That's going to be the pay-per-view that we're going to be watching tomorrow night here on the channel, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, and this one has been uploaded to WCW's Vault channel on YouTube. So the link is already on my channel right now. You can save that for tomorrow, and in the description of tomorrow's link, you'll have the link to the YouTube video of the 89 Halloween Havoc. So that's what we're going to be watching tomorrow night right here, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, and most likely we'll be here for a Raw review on Monday as well, but I'm not completely sure yet. But yeah, I expect us to at least be here Monday to talk about Raw. If not, maybe Tuesday afternoon, I'll do a Raw review for you guys. But you should see me here for at least the next 3 days. And I'm also working on more stuff. I know I got Patreon stuff that I've been promising that's coming. I've still got it, working. It's just about done. And I have got a bunch of shorts that I'm going to pump out. I'm going to wait to tell you what the name of it is, but a little shorts series that I've been thinking about forever. Finally, I was able to record a little bit, so I'll throw all those together and start hitting the channel here in the next week or two now that my transition into this new place is now finally just about complete. As a matter of fact, this week I had to do a little home improvement project. My shelves were kind of coming apart on me. I kind of built them really, really fast, so I went to Home Depot, repurposed them, got some better wood, built some better supports, and made everything nice behind me. So that was another full day of shit that I had to do the other day. I'm like, I threw up this background so quick just because I wanted to be ready for streaming that I didn't build it really properly. So I took some time. As you can see now, it's much more level, much more even, and got some work done this week on that. So now I can focus back onto the content creation part of everything here. And I'm excited for what I'm going to be throwing at you soon here on the YouTube channel. So just keep a look out for that because nostalgia will be running wild sooner rather than later. Happy to be picking up or going to be delivering, I should say, some more content. Also, I want to warn you guys, Tito usually hangs out with me in here. This is where his litter box, his food, and everything is, but he was insisting on staying outside. He likes to look outside the sliding screen door and look at the birds outside. He did not want to move, but sometimes he wants to come back in. So if I hear him fucking with the door, I'm going to have to get up and let him in. So just want to let you know about that in case I spring out of here real quick. I got to be listening for the T-Man. But anyway, that's what's on tap for tomorrow and possibly Monday. And I think we should start rocking and rolling on this Saturday. I know there's a lot of football going on. I know we got World Series, game number 2 tonight, as Toronto beat the Dodgers by a touchdown last night, which was awesome because I don't like the Dodgers. And I'm rooting for the Blue Jays in the World Series. So we got that going on tonight as well as a shitload of college football today. But we are going to open up with that mug on your screen right there, Y2J, Chris Jericho. 100 million nicknames since he was Y2J. But we've been talking about him now for the past 2 or 3 podcasts, because even prior to this rumor, kind of circulating online, we have been speculating about Jericho for at least the last year, that when whatever current deal he's under in AEW does come up, if he will go back to the WWE. And I've been saying ever since he started in AEW that Jericho will definitely have a WWE Hall of Fame induction one day. He's never been really a bridge burner. He's never, left WWE under really, really bad terms. Even when he was working for AEW, things seemed fine. He sent a video in for John Cena's 20th anniversary. He was a guest on Broken Skull Sessions on the WWE Network, and Jericho has always maintained good business relationships everywhere he's went. So even though he was in AEW, he was their first champion, he was the demo god, and he was carrying that AEW flag hard. It was really just nothing against WWE, so I didn't feel like there was any bad blood there. And one day, Jericho, being the legend that he is going to have to go into the WWE Hall of Fame, because that's where the meat of his career really was. He had a run in WCW, he had a big run in AEW, but the bulk of his body of work and the bulk of his success and championships all happened in the WWE. And he's had a tremendous career, and that needs to be recognized and honored. So I've always believed that one day he will go back to WWE. And now that we've seen Chris Jericho through so many different chapters in AEW, different factions, working with all sorts of different guys. Sometimes he succeeded in elevating somebody. Sometimes working with Jericho didn't do a damn thing. I mean, didn't seem to help Action Andrade or any of those other guys very much. But there's other guys where it did. And some of his feuds, it felt like the point of those was to try to establish stars for AEW's future. And I think he did his job there. And him and Tony Khan are, have a good relationship, despite the fact that Jericho has probably told Tony, because Tony was asked about Jericho, and Tony with his typical TK response, I'd love to have him back. He's welcome back anytime he wants. Jericho's a huge part of AEW, blah, blah, blah. But I think Jericho is probably up front with Tony because he's not going to be sketchy towards him. He's a little like, look, my contract is up. I'm 55 or whatever I am now. I got to go back. I got to go back to WWE and do the Hall of Fame and have my career send off. I thought at one point that maybe Jericho could kind of adopt like a Triple H type of role in AEW, but over the years it seems clear that Tony Khan doesn't want to relinquish that much control. So having somebody like Jericho having a position like that maybe is just something that wasn't going to happen there. So him going back to WWE now seems the likely option, and that should be interesting because CM Punk is there and some other people that he might have interesting relationships with. But Jericho, all personal, political shit aside with that guy, his career is one of my favorites throughout wrestling. And I've had a chance to meet Jericho a couple of times. I've been on the Jericho cruise, and I've always been a fan, of his wrestling work. For the most part, a lot of stuff he was doing near the end there in AEW was not doing it for me. Had no interest in seeing him on TV because I was just done with it. I'm done with him there. He's done everything. He's had several different factions. He's worked with everybody. There's literally nothing left for him to do in AEW. For example, if he were to show up in AEW, I'm like, oh man, I don't want to see his ass again. But if he came back to WWE, it would be a different story because he'd just be coming in to probably do a retirement plan or angle or whatever. So the rumors of Jericho heading back to WWE have been continuing and persisting all week long for the past several weeks, to the point where, it's been rumored that he's going to be sought after by a lot of entities. But, this is ridiculous. If Jericho's a free agent, there's only one place he's going to go. You could have New Japan toss some money at him or Mexico or something like that. Sure, he can go do something or make an appearance, but he can pretty much do that now while he's in AEW. He's going to be going back to the WWE is what's going to happen here as soon as his contract is up. Matt Hardy this week even said the same thing. He thinks that Jericho's done all he can do there. It's time for him to come home and put a nice little bow on his career. Now, in terms of what he's going to do, Jericho in the ring is not anything that I really want to see. But in WWE, is he going to go in there and sign like a 3-year deal? I feel like it would have to be a year maximum in the ring, just enough time for him to wrap up his career, unless he's really going to try to go longer and longer. But, if he's coming back to the WWE and hypothetically he shows up in the Royal Rumble, I would try to run a retirement angle through 2026. Maybe not necessarily at WrestleMania, maybe at the next year's WrestleMania, although that would put it in Saudi Arabia, which might be a little bit weird. But whatever he does is going to have to lead to a retirement. And he's just another name to throw on the pile, with the Goldbergs and the John Cenas and the AJ Styles and the Tanahashi. Now you got Chris Jericho. CM Punk is going to be retiring soon. Samoa Joe is going to be retiring soon. I talked about this last week, the changing of the guard. It's happening right now. So it's wild. So Jericho coming back, going into the WWE Hall of Fame and having some sort of a retirement match, angle, farewell tour, whatever it may be. I feel like if I was Jericho, that's something that I would want for my legacy. And hopefully he can have a last match and he won't have the itch to get back in the ring 6 years from now when he's, 79 years old or whatever. I think he should come back and wrap it up. And I think WWE could do it nicely. Same goes for Adam Copeland, when he's done with AEW, maybe he can just come back for a quick year contract and have one more final match, but, he's already in the Hall of Fame, so he doesn't need it really as much as Jericho, where I think Jericho should probably just finish his career in AEW. Copeland had a chance to finish his career in WWE, and he chose to finish it in AEW, where Jericho, is different. I think going back there, I think can be fun if done right. Because Jericho, I felt like it was eating up too much TV time, in AEW. We didn't need to see him. It's not going to have that effect in WWE. It's not going to be the same. He's going to be one part of one show in one angle. He's not going to be taking up time or holding anybody back, anything like that. He's going to be a legend who's going to be honored in her farewell tour, and I have no problem with that. And I think a Hall of Fame induction will be a lot of fun, and I would not be surprised if Chris Jericho and his good friend Trash Bag Ho go in the same class. How ironic and fun would that be? So Jericho wrapping up business in AEW when his contract is up, I believe at the end of the year. That's what the reports are saying. He'll be heading back to WWE, and a spot in the Rumble seems extremely likely. But the problem with that is that I feel like it's a little bit harder to hide guys in Saudi Arabia. So if Jericho is going to be making the trip over there, I guess you can still hide him in a trailer or a hotel or a whatever, the whole damn weekend. But it just feels like he's going to get spotted. It's going to be impossible for him not to get seen, and his return is going to get spoiled. So Rumble being in Saudi does make it a little bit different. If they really want to surprise us, make the fans think that we're going to see Jericho in Saudi Arabia and then give him to us early. Have him show up on the Go Home Raw or something. I'll see you at the Rumble. Have him announce his induction there on TV, on Raw, on Netflix before they head to Saudi Arabia. That type of thing, So that's how I would have Jericho come back since the Rumble is in Saudi this year. But sounds like he'll be heading back to WWE, and I'm not really surprised about that. Also, let's talk about the latest with Andrade. This whole situation just got really weird after he was fired by WWE for failing some wellness policies tests, and then he immediately showed up in AEW because he was of the belief that he didn't have a no-compete. But once he showed up in AEW, all of a sudden, WWE had a problem with it. They sent out cease and desists or whatever, and he is now kind of in limbo here, and we don't really know what's going on with this situation still. It sounds like it's just we're waiting to figure out how it's going to be resolved. And there was the rumors that we talked about last week of the 1-year no-compete, which I don't know how any of this is going to hold up in court. And I think WWE wants to try to avoid going to court, because if they go to court, they are going to lose. And then that's going to set your precedent for, any future situations like this. And they want to avoid that at all cost. So I think WWE is kind of shooting themselves in the foot here, being little bitches about this. Just let Andrade go. It's not worth the trouble. Pick your battle. This ain't Roman Reigns we're talking about. Let Andrade go there. He's already been in both companies. It's not going to do a damn thing to you to let him be there. So just fuck it, whatever. But if they want to now, try to hold him hostage or not allow him to compete in AEW until a possible 1-year no compete has run up, I just can't see it being that long. So I feel like it's going to be somewhere in the 90 days, which we talked about last week. If Andrade chooses to fight this, as he does have good lawyers, the amount of time it would take to resolve this would be past the 90 days anyway. So it sounds like he's probably, when it's all said and done, going to have to sit out 90 days, which sucks. But there was even some talk, and this was a report that PW Insider had this week, where it was being discussed in some Mexican wrestling circles that Andrade would be brought back to WWE as a result of this clause. Basically, in lucha circles, they're believing that WWE maybe is trying to bring him back to the company using that 1-year no-compete as leverage. And I think that is just absolutely wild and impossible. If I was Andrade, I wouldn't want to go back there at all. And then if they made me, we'll come back and we'll still pay you, but you can't go work for AEW. You have to sit out for a year. Sorry, I had a barking dog out there. So the whole situation is still really weird, but that report that, some in the lucha circles believe he could be heading back to WWE, I don't believe that for a second, but how wild would that be if he did? Imagine a situation where he leaves WWE, debuts in AEW, and then only appears once and then comes back to WWE. That's just very strange. So I don't see, Fightful. Here's what Fightful Select said about this as well. They had some notes on that PW Insider story. And they said, and I quote, in regards to PW Insider's story, that many in Mexican wrestling circles think Andrade could be brought back to WWE. WWE sources have told us that as of this moment, he's not factored into any of their plans, but wouldn't elaborate beyond that. So doesn't sound like he's coming back, but that would just be a wild scenario. And for WWE, why would they want to go through the trouble? And I've said it time and time again, for this company that thumbs its nose down at AEW, and acts, like they're not, or the fans, I should say, that aren't competition. WWE seems just paranoid as all hell that this company even exists. It should not bother them that Andrade went there. They should be confident in their own ability, their own product, their own quality of television and pay-per-views. That, yeah, AEW, take anybody you want. It doesn't matter. We're WWE, because they do have that arrogance about them. So why does that arrogance and that overconfidence, where they just constantly stroke themselves off, why for some reason does that end with this? They've got all that sass. Any other time you talk to them, Triple H, what we do, and every fucking scrum, they're whacking off to the ticket sales and the financials and the ratings and the attendance and all that stuff, and their YouTube views and their social media likes, and how big and bad and unstoppable and huge they are globally, worldwide. But when it comes to something like this, they fold and turn into little paranoid, insecure bitches. That confidence should remain. You should be saying, we don't care, take his ass. We'll still kick your ass in the ratings. That's the attitude WWE should have, but they don't. AEW just lives rent-free in their head, and they're constantly, they hate the existence of them. They hate that they exist, because AEW forces them to actually give a fuck, and that's hard. And I think with all that confidence the WWE has, plus the fact that they are such a big company, that even with some of the idiotic things they're doing, turning the fans off, I just don't think there's ever going to be a company that's going to take that number one spot away from them. So this Andrade shit shouldn't matter. And it sucks for him, but hopefully at the end of the day, if it turns out that he just has to wait another 90 days before debuting, I can actually live with that. It's fine, because that would be the situation under normal circumstances if he was released or whatnot, but being fired with cause, it's kind of different, and it made the contract specifications a little bit murky, and we don't really exactly know what's going on. But sounds like we're probably going to be, another, 70 days away from Andrade showing up back in AEW. And speaking of no competes, here's something wild. Samantha Irvin, our friend Samantha, who we love, she referenced on Twitter the other day that she apparently has a 2-year non-compete. Now, as we know, shortly after WrestleMania 40, she left WWE in a very shocking way. We were very surprised that she was going to be leaving the company, because we have been talking her up. She's going to be the next, Howard Finkel of this brand. I was always a big Lillian Garcia fan and a big Lillian mark, but Samantha came around and just blew our minds. She was so tremendous and good at what she did, but turns out that she has a lot of other interests outside of being a ring announcer. She wants to do more, plus she has a music career where she really likes to create music. She's extremely talented. I remember that the Wally Mania thing at WrestleMania 40, when she was playing the fucking flute to the Razor Ramon song. I'm like, good God, this woman is too good to be true. So she's tremendous, and it shocked a lot of fans that she left, but she left for very, very valid reasons. WWE saw her as an announcer and announcer only, and she wanted to do more. So she left, but she was still under contract to them, which I don't think any of us really knew at the time. But I remember at the time of her leaving, she did say that her departure was in the works for a couple of months, which probably means they were trying to negotiate what to do about her contract. And then right around that same time, Ricochet disappears as well. Ricochet turns up in AEW. Samantha Irvin leaves WWE, and so WWE wants to make sure that she doesn't jump right over there and join Ricochet. And in this case, a 2-year non-compete is completely insane. It's lunacy, but at least, unlike Andrade, maybe this is something I could understand, because this woman was becoming the voice of WWE. Even in the main event of the 40th WrestleMania, when Cody Rhodes beats Roman Reigns and wins the championship, she was so overcome and overwhelmed in the emotion of it that she couldn't even get the announcement out, and it was just like, she just seemed like she was going to really be WWE's voice, and she was becoming that. And so when she leaves, that's kind of a blow. The last thing WWE wants to do is have the woman that's been announcing all of their big pay-per-views and, one of the biggest WrestleMania main events of all time, announcing, the intros there and announcing the winner, and then she's going to immediately go to the competition and start announcing there. I understand that. You want to try to prevent that as long as possible, but you can't hold her hostage forever. But apparently they did get her for 2 years. As the other day she tweeted this, quote, "1 year down, 1 year left on my non-compete. Can't wait." And she's replying to another fan, by the way. "Can't wait. I hope you enjoy my songs in the meantime and look back on all the memories as fondly as I do. Love and miss you all. And remember, I never left for music. I am music. Hope to see you soon." So she clearly has a passion, and that passion is music. And she's tremendous. Samantha follows me. She likes my tweets and shit. So she's awesome. So does Ricochet. And when you watch her YouTube videos and stuff, she's very talented. Her stuff is very well produced. She's a great singer. She plays instruments. I've said it before about Ricochet. You found yourself a keeper, and they got married not long ago. So I can't believe, though, it's a 2-year non-compete. It's just insane. These non-competes and how badly it can fuck with you. Samantha's case is a little bit different. I've always complained in the past about these, because with wrestlers, you have a finite amount of time. You've got a window of time that you're going to be young enough and healthy enough and, capable enough to do this as a living. And when a company is holding you hostage and you're just sitting there burning years off of your life not doing anything, that's got to be, if I was a wrestler, I would be incredibly frustrated in situations like that, especially as I approached my 40s and I can see the window closing. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel of my career. I'm winding it down and I don't have time to be fucked with. And that really bugs me. But with Samantha, she's not going to be getting in the ring. She can essentially do what she's doing forever. So, a 2-year non-compete is a little bit different for her, and is insane as it sounds. I actually don't have that much of a problem with it, because I'm assuming she left WWE while she was still under contract. So had she not left, I'm wondering when her contract would have been up anyway. Might have been right around this time. Maybe the 2-year non-compete is because she had 2 years left. So they're like, all right, we'll let you go, but you can't work anywhere else until, your contract would have been up with us. So that might have been the case. I don't know. We have no idea. But 2-year non-compete for Samantha Irvin is nuts. So we have 1 year from, yesterday. So October of next year, next Halloween, we'll see if maybe Samantha Irvin will pop up in AEW as a ring announcer. We will see. Get rid of the Dapper Yapper and bring in Samantha the Bomb. I'd be into that. All right, let's talk a little bit about Bron Breakker. So Bron Breakker, as we saw, was the one that initially took out Seth Rollins when the Vision turned on him a couple of weeks ago. And that surprised a lot of us, but it turned out Rollins was injured, so now we know why that happened. But I had been saying this right off the bat that, I still think it's a bit too early for Breakker. The fact that he's walking around carrying that championship and shit, I'm like, oh man, are they going to put the title on him right now instead of next year like I thought that they were going to do? Well, apparently that is still the plan. Apparently WWE still has plans to put the world title on Breakker, and it's going to be happening right around the time that we all expected it to in 2026. It's not going to happen right now. And one of my big complaints of this past Monday's Raw, I had a complaint about Dynamite that's kind of similar too, with the Hangman Page stuff, but with Breakker and Reed, they were taken out of the Battle Royal by Adam Pearce, and I was complaining a lot on Monday about that it was so lame. the way that, Breaker was just rude to Pierce. So that's why he took him out of the Battle Royal, both of them. And then they both seemed to be very accepting of that. Like when Heyman was talking to him backstage, like, hey, we're out of the Battle Royal. Dude, you help us out, Heyman. Figure out a way to get in there. Like, where are these two rampaging beasts that annihilated Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns? Why, I would understand that decision if they would have taken out Adam Pearce, like if they would have just annihilated Adam Pearce and beat the hell out of him, then he can do a suspension angle or whatever. But the fact that he just booted them from the Battle Royal because they were mean to him, it's just a little weak. It was just fucking weak. So the reason, though, that I said on Monday that Reed and Breaker weren't in the Battle Royal because neither man is planned to win the vacant title. They want to wait for Breaker. So if Breaker isn't going to win the title, why put him in the Battle Royal to get eliminated? And so that's exactly why Reed and Breaker weren't in the Battle Royal, but the storyline reason for it was fucking weak, man. And they should have done way better with that. They should have had Breaker and Reed destroy or beat up or do something to Adam Pearce that would make him render this decision, and they seem to be way too accepting of it, and it was just weird. So I thought that was lame as all hell. But it does make sense that they're not going to be in the Battle Royal if they're not going to win it, because you don't want to eliminate them. You want to keep their momentum going. So apparently the plan is still to put the belt on Braun Breaker next year. So what I've been saying all along, even prior to Seth getting hurt, is that what I thought was going to happen is that Punk would beat Seth for the title. Then Roman Reigns would beat Punk for the title, and then Braun Breaker would beat Roman for the title. Because if you are going to crown Braun Breaker, he's going to win his first championship. This is going to be the championship that's going to launch him into being the next big thing in the company. That really should be a bigger stage than a streamed show on Peacock, for Saturday night's main event. This needs to be a WrestleMania or a SummerSlam type of thing. And so I feel like that's still going to be the case. I fully expect CM Punk to beat Jey Uso and win the World Championship on Saturday night's main event, which he probably was scheduled to beat Rollins for that title at some point anyway. So now Punk's got the belt. Now you book Punk and Roman. Maybe you do it at the Royal Rumble. Maybe you do it at WrestleMania. WrestleMania, Punk and Roman would be a lot of fun. I would like to get Punk and Cody done if we could. That would also be a lot of fun. But Punk and Roman at WrestleMania with Roman winning the World Championship. And then Roman has the title now. And then let's say he carries it into SummerSlam and drops it to Braun Breaker. Because otherwise you're going to do WrestleMania in Saudi next year. And, we're in October. So you're talking about another year and a half to wait on Breaker. I think that's too long. I think we're talking about within the next year, within the next 365 days is when Breaker should probably win the World Championship. And I think SummerSlam would be a perfect spot for it. So Breaker, that's where I would have him penciled in to win the title at SummerSlam Night 2, main event. Braun Breaker, Roman Reigns, and Breaker wins. I would do something like that. So I think it's going to be Punk, Roman, and Breaker is going to be the order of the next three champions. It just is a matter of when these matches are going to happen and when Punk is going to drop the title to Roman and when Roman's going to drop the title to Breaker. But another name you can't forget about, though, is Gunther, and he's going to be back soon, apparently, to face John Cena in his final match. So if Gunther is back on Raw, I don't know how he's going to be okay with just not being a part of this. They might have to give him something to do or a feud or something to keep him occupied until he can get back into the title picture, unless they move him over to SmackDown after he beats John Cena and he maybe starts booking a WrestleMania match against Brock Lesnar. And I just heard Tito at the door. I'm going to go let him in. Come in, T. All right, we got him. Tito has been rescued. So when you think about all those names, I feel like Gunther, a possibility of him heading over to SmackDown is pretty likely. Otherwise, I think it crowds up the World Championship scene on Raw, and you still have a chance to get done or to get that Gunther and Brock match done that we were supposed to get a couple of years ago. before Brock got in hot water. So we will be monitoring all of that. Apparently, plans are for Survivor Series to still do a War Games match with a Vision team taking on a Roman and Punk team. So Roman and Punk heading up a team, that could play right into what I was talking about Roman Reigns being the next guy after Punk to hold the title. So you could start setting that up in War Games, especially if they lose. If it's Breaker, getting the final pin in War Games to win it for the Vision, that leads to some dissension between Roman and Punk. You build a match between the two of them at the Rumble in Saudi, and Roman wins the championship in Saudi Arabia. Or maybe you wait and you book it at WrestleMania. Because if Roman wins in Saudi Arabia, then who does Roman face? He's going to have to face the winner of the Rumble. So maybe Roman wins the Rumble. Might have to be a Roman Rumble win, rather than a Sammy one. Or maybe Sammy wins the Rumble and Roman wins the Chamber. Might have to be something like that. A Sammy Rumble win would be terrific. As well. I like the idea of Chris Jericho screwing him and Jericho and Sammy working a program at Mania. I think that would also be good. So there's lots of possibilities in terms of how you book this or set it up or how you plan things in 2026. But there's a lot of big names to keep our eyes on, especially with the world title scene on Raw as it stands now. So there you go. In a report that's not too surprising, WrestleNomics had a breakdown and a deep dive into WWE ticket sales. And none of this is shocking because we can all add and we can all see WWE's ticket prices have been skyrocketing over the past couple of years. And the WrestleNomics report is claiming that WWE ticket prices has doubled since the TKO merger. Now, we also heard that report a while back about how Vince McMahon was the one who was pricing out tickets because he wanted them to be affordable for families. Well, TKO doesn't give a fuck about any of that. They want to be able to charge the maximum amount possible to the fucking penny. Every single penny and nickel they can squeeze out of people they want to. And that is one thing that was better under Vince McMahon. I'm happy Vince is gone. I don't ever want to see his perverted ass again. But there are aspects to WWE when he was in charge that were better. And the ticket prices are right at the top of the list because prices are insane. Now, I'm going to Survivor Series in Petco Park. The tickets weren't insane, but they were still pricey. I mean, we're one up, level up off the floor. In Petco, we're going to be down like the third baseline a little bit. Really good viewing towards the ring, but relatively far back, but not up in the cheap seats. And I think our seats, I don't know, Chris or whoever's going with me is in the chat right now. Were they 300-ish, something like that? So, and that's in a bigger stadium, but you've got ringside seats for John Cena's final match going for like 40,000 or something ridiculous. It's just insane. It's just completely insane how, WWE is no longer, a place where you can just take the whole family out to a WWE show anymore, not unless you want to sit up in the nosebleeds. So that has to be hard. I'm my own fan. I just have to worry about myself. But, if I was a parent with 3 young little boys who all love wrestling, it'd be almost impossible to go take them to a show, on a regular basis and stuff. So that all just sucks, but it's not really something that surprised us because we've seen how expensive these tickets are getting. And I assumed that I was going to go to Vegas last year to watch WrestleMania because I went to LA for $39 and our seats were really good. And again, they were right around that $300 range. Those same exact seats that I sat in at SoFi for WrestleMania 49, if you just find the equivalent seats in Las Vegas at Allegiant Stadium, it was like, I don't know, 5 times more, something like that. It was ridiculous. I'm like, wait, these same seats that were $300 are $1,200 now, $1,300? Like, what the fuck? So, no, I'm not going. I'm going to sit here and hang out with you guys. Not going to do that. So, that kind of sucks since the merger. And I'm sure at some point, Saudi Arabia will own WWE as well. Apparently, Uncle Dave was doing some math this week, and he seems to think that the WWE and ESPN deal is turning out not to be working out for ESPN. He feels that they are losing money on the deal. And basically, he was just doing some math here. It was reported that ESPN had gained 2.1 million, or the new ESPN app had gained a little over 2 million new subscribers from August to September. And then the weekend of WrestlePalooza alone, they gained another 150-ish thousand new subscribers. So Dave, now these are not bad numbers, so Dave now started doing some math and started saying, like, if every month is like that, then WWE was only worth $35 billion and ESPN paid $50 for it. So this is one aspect where, I think Dave's a little wrong. It's not even Mania season yet, and so these are like September numbers, and I think they're going to see a lot bigger increases as you get into Rumble and you get into Mania season, and I don't really care about these type of numbers. This is not anything that affects me at all. I don't care if WWE or ESPN is losing money in the deal or anything like that. But I do care about the fact that ESPN and its journalists are honest. So as long as the journalists keep saying so whenever WWE throws a shitty show at us, that's all I care about. And of course, they were all butthurt about WrestlePalooza, and I was one of the first ones to say, "Hey, idiots, just shut up and do good on the next one. You got a pay-per-view coming up in just a couple of weeks. Crown Jewel is right there. All you have to do," and I can already tell that the Crown Jewel card is looking much better, "just deliver on that show." And they did. How hard was that? Just do better. Everything is so fast moving these days. If you get one bad review, who cares? People are going to forget about it in just a couple of weeks because you're going to have another show. You'll do better on that one, and then your praises will be sung. So they did better. They bounced back on Crown Jewel. So I hope that the ESPN deal, things like that, like these type of numbers coming out and WWE wanting to make sure that ESPN is happy with this deal, that is going to force them to not suck. And WWE can really phone in a lot of their products sometimes, and it's so uninspiring and it's not compelling. And, a lot of stuff that's going on right now is just kind of like all throughout the entire wrestling landscape. So a deal like this, and, when you have reports of a pay-per-view coming out that's just average or below average and ESPN is saying so, it's going to force WWE's hand. You can't just be lazy. But they're still being lazy. The Battle Royal to determine the new World Heavyweight Champion was lazy as fuck. I thought there was holes all in the Braun Breaker thing and Reed thing from this past Monday when they weren't in the Battle Royal, how much better they could have handled that. So they still don't seem to get it. They still seem to be phoning things in a little bit, and they're not taking advantage of unfortunate situations or inconveniences like the Rollins injury, taking advantage of that and doing something fun. They're not doing that. They just kind of try to get around these inconveniences with as little effort as possible. Like they're a D student in high school who does his book report on the last night. It's just sucks. So I hope that there's some pressure being put on WWE by this ESPN deal. But in terms of Dave's math, thinking that so far it's not worth it, it's way early here, bud. It's way too early to make that determination whether or not this deal is going to be beneficial to ESPN or not. And I think next year, when they get to WrestleMania time, they're going to see some of those really big increases there and hopefully start reaching the numbers and the parameters they're looking for, I guess. But I think Dave should cool his jets a little bit on that. But as we were talking about the WWE creative and the storylines and stuff, there was that story that we talked about last week about a hire in AEW, or I'm sorry, a hire in WWE, a gentleman who's going to be overseeing a lot of WWE's use of AI. And it was kind of brought up that AI is going to be writing storylines and everything. And like I've talked about before, I'm very AI illiterate. I've never chatted a single GPT. I just recently started sending instant grams. So like I'm just not dialed in to AI. I've never used it. I've never generated a single image of anything, and I'm behind on that. I actually need to get in, even though I don't like AI, I'll never use it for the channel. I despise AI thumbnails and AI art and stuff like that. I'll never use it here. I think it's cheap and lazy, but I should learn at least how to use it and at least download ChatGPT and try to do something with it. But I don't even know like what to do, which ones to use or whatever. So a lot of fans were like saying, holy shit, they're going to start using AI for storylines. And I was saying last week, I said, can it be any worse? Can it be any worse than Road Dogg? Like some of the things we're seeing in WWE right now, and even a lot of things we're seeing in AEW, how could it be worse if AI does book these things? But I mean, if WWE can use AI tools to write storylines, could fans use similar AI tools to predict what those storylines are? Like how deep does this go? What is dark matter? What happens when you die? Is reality real? Are we living in a simulation? I mean, I don't know. I don't have a lot of good arguments against living in a simulation, to be honest. I kind of think we are. But this AI stuff is just mind-blowing, and we have a little bit of an update and context on some of these AI rumors in WWE. Here's what Fightful Select had to say about this. Now, Fightful learned that Fightful learned that there have actually been AI tools at the disposal of the creative team for years. However, it's mostly been used as a glorified creative assistant to look up things like last time two wrestlers had a match and things like that. And that's a good thing to use AI for, just like Google. One source familiar with the process said that it would be more of a, quote, not starting with a blank page approach than, quote, write the show for us. So again, they're still going to be using this for, storylines. That's what came out. And people are like, oh, hold on. It's not going to be for storylines. It's just going to be for organization tools and things like that. But no, they actually might be using this to assist them in some of these storylines and some of the branches of it. So it goes on to say, in asking around on the creative team, nobody said they knew of anyone on the team who actually used the AI system provided for more than a couple of minutes. Regarding the new hire, the WWE creative team is of the impression that that this gentleman is being brought in to find ways to help use AI to remove background noise of shots or to organize files quickly or work on production elements as opposed to creative storylines. One employee in production told us that they work, quote, insane nonstop hours, and they're actually excited to get AI aiding in some of the things they do. Specifically, we were told that AI is not replacing the creative team. The creative team writes the shows, then produces it with the talent directly. A top talent reached out to Fightful and said Michael Hayes, Paul Heyman, and Ed Koskey are not AI, and took exception to the belief that AI storylines were going to happen. So still a lot of uncertainty there, but it sounds like WWE is just implementing and incorporating, top tech and technology into what they do is what they do. So, they might just be using it for production stuff, removing background noise, organizing files, looking up data, facts, things like that. All of that is fine to use AI for. I've used AI, or I guess the Google part of AI, where you Google and hit AI mode and it runs through some stuff. So I guess I've used a little bit of AI, but I'm not that savvy in AI at all. So if they're using it for stuff like this, I honestly don't. It's a bizarre story, but it's not one where I'm thinking, oh, okay, a computer is just going to be writing all of WWE stuff, and there's going to be no need for agents or producers or writers or even a gorilla position anymore. It's going to be all robotic. We're so far away from us reaching that I'm hoping I'll just be dead and you kids can handle that shit and live through that. But I don't think it's to that extent. Just using AI tools to help assist you in a million different departments in WWE, I don't see a problem with it all. And if they did start using it for storylines, it might be better. We've been shitting on WWE storylines for years, for decades, how stupid and lazy and idiotic they can fucking be. You get one great one for every 40 shitty ones, and it's just like, AI might be able to do better. I'm like I said, I'm not a fan of AI images and stuff, but if AI can come up with something a little bit more competent and that makes rational sense storyline wise than what we currently see in WWE, I'm willing to give anything a shot. So I'm one of the few that actually has no problem with WWE using AI. Like I find them so exhausting at times and so formulaic and so predictable that AI could be a step up. Shit, Tony Khan, if WWE starts using this crap and they start seeing success and the storylines are becoming more interesting, more compelling, and aren't and aren't written in such a way that hints at laziness, I'm all for it. And then Tony Khan should be like, oh, maybe I should give that a shot. Have AI help me too. We will see. Speaking of wild story, it's been a wild story week. I just wanted to bring this one up because apparently there was some talk about Charles Manson wanting to meet Bray Wyatt. So former WWE writer Nick Manfredini, he was a guest on Freddie Prinze Jr.'s Wrestling with Freddie podcast this week. And this is what he had to say, and I quote, Charles Manson. I don't know if this story has ever been told. Wyndham's teammate, former college football teammate, became a prison guard at Charles Manson's prison. Allegedly, this guy showed Manson the Bray Wyatt promos, and he wanted to meet him, and it was his whole thing. I swear, it is 100% true. And then he went on to say that Bray's dad, of course, Mike Rotundo, had pitched an idea to Vince for a WWE Network special where Wyatt would meet Charles Manson and they would film it, but he claimed the pitch was immediately squashed. So Charles Manson has access to WWE promos in prison? I don't know what the rules are. Like, if you're a prison guard, can you pull out your phone and show a prisoner a video? Are you allowed to do that? Like, they're not allowed to have phones, but you're allowed to show them something? Like, how does all that work? I have no idea. And I'm sure, some criminals like Manson or maybe some lifelong criminals in prison, maybe they have a few perks. They might have a TV in their cell or whatever. I don't know what the fucking rules are. But the fact that a former prison guard had shown Manson Bray Wyatt promos, and there was a lot of inspiration in Manson and cult leaders and what Bray Wyatt did. He took a lot of inspiration from, Cape Fear, right? Waylon Mercy did the same thing, and he had a very cult leader type of a vibe to him for sure. But I'm not sure how much I believe this story as being real. But it is kind of interesting, and maybe in a different time. In the Attitude Era, I think Vince McMahon would have been absolutely open to Charles Manson showing up on his product, but not in more modern times, which apparently if that was pitched, it was immediately squashed, and I can see why. Vince once had Melanie Pillman on Raw the night after Brian Pillman died. In those days, in October of 1997, fuck yeah, I could see Vince doing that. In October of 2018, ain't no fucking way. But that was an interesting story. I think one of my favorite scenes in all of cinema is basically the end of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And that movie's only a few years old, but it's based on one of Tarantino's movies, just like Django Unchained, how he kind of just rewrites history. It's like a satisfying rewriting of history with a different outcome. And, of course, the Manson cult, murdered, what's her name, the actress and whatever in L.A. And in the movie, they show up to do that, and Brad Pitt fucks them all up. My favorite is when he stomps Tex's face. Tex. No, it's dumber than that. Oh, my God. Such a great scene. Even if you've never seen the movie, just look up on YouTube the final fight scene in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and watch Brad Pitt. The way he takes that girl and he's just fucking ramming her face into the table, into the mantle of the brick mantle on the fireplace, just caving her skull in. My God. That's for the sickos right there. But, man, that's one of my favorite scenes in all of cinema because it makes you feel like you're getting some revenge, even though you're not, and that's what's so frustrating. But anyway, the Bray Wyatt and Charles Manson story was weird, and I just wanted to mention it because the last couple of weeks we've had some weird stories. So that one felt like it fit, and we should talk about it. Switching gears over to AEW real quick. Luckily, there is a hope that Swerve Strickland could possibly be back for a winter return. And I hope so because, you've got Swerve Strickland out right now. This past Wednesday on Dynamite, there was no Kenny Omega and there was no Hangman Page. Right after At WrestleDream, he said he's going to ruin Joe's life. He no-shows Dynamite, but he's going to be on Collision tonight? What the fuck is that about? So you had no Kenny Omega. You had no Hangman Page. Swerve Strickland is injured. So is Will Ospreay. So is Jay White. Christian and Copeland are off TV right now as well. And so is MJF. So they're missing so many guys here right now. And so this news of Swerve potentially being ready for the winter, maybe at the end of December, maybe he can make it back by World's End. That is some really good news. Wishing Swerve all the best in his recovery, because we really need to get him back, man. Also, kind of surprising, apparently Candice LeRae has started the process of transitioning into a backstage role. She's been training as a match producer, and she had her last match, I think, last month in NXT. She took a loss, and she's been working behind the scenes. So she has a lot to offer. I am surprised that it's happening this fast. I really like Candice LeRae. I think maybe with her, I think she had a harder time transitioning into the WWE's world. I think maybe Candice, honestly, this is going to sound weird, but I mean it. I think Candice LeRae might have been better and maybe had a little bit more success as a women's wrestler if she was in AEW. I think WWE is just a little too big for her. I feel like she's a better wrestler than Zelina Vega, but I feel like she's not becoming a major star for the same reason that Zelina Vega is not. I don't know, maybe it's just a too small thing. I don't know. But for whatever reason, Candice doesn't ever look like she's going to be a contender for a world championship, but she has a tremendous amount of experience. She's a veteran now. She's also a mom, and she's married to Johnny Wrestling. So this is Mrs. Wrestling. And I think she'd be great. And I hope everything works out great for her. I hope she turns into a long-term, employee in WWE who's a long-time producer. Like we've seen, TJ Wilson's been there for a long time now producing matches. Like, who else has been back there in a producer agent role that we've seen for a lot of years now? Gregory Helms has put a few years in, and I would love if Candice became one of those people. So all the best to her and her transition to a backstage role. Don't really know if this was WWE's call or her call, or maybe they were thinking that, hey, we're probably not going to renew your contract. Would you like to take a backstage role instead? I don't know. But apparently she is working backstage now, and good for her. And here is a fun story. Did you guys see Marco Stunt's video? Marco Stunt has a new job. He is now a car salesman. I believe he lives in Mississippi, somewhere down south. And he uploaded a whole video on his social media. He's working at this Ford dealership somewhere in Mississippi. And he is talking about how much he loves his job. He just got hired there, apparently. He's like, I haven't been a car salesman for very long, but I love my job. I love coming to work. I love working with people. And it shows videos of him running around the dealership, all sorts of fucking energy. Come on in to see me. We'll set you up for a good deal. Just very car salesman-y. And he seems to really be liking the gig. Even though he hasn't started it yet, but he seems to really be liking it, and good for him. He seems very, very happy. I hope this lasts. I hope it sticks. He did talk about him being a former professional wrestler in the video and him being on TV and everything. So I'm hoping that helps the Ford dealership with people. Hey, if there are wrestling fans that are in the market for a Ford, I'd want to come in and work with Marco Stunt. I want Marco to sell me the car. And I really hope that this endeavor works out for him, because it doesn't look like he may never return to the ring. Jurassic Express is currently reunited in AEW. I always thought it would be fun if they did bring him back. Well, they did bring him back, didn't they? Marco Stunt did work against Jack Perry, didn't he? Didn't he come back for like one match? So they have brought him back. But bringing him back again, I thought would be fun. But he's moving on with his life. We saw Jake Hager starting like a trucking company, and now Marco Stunt is a car salesman. I used to live with a car salesman. One of my roommates for a couple of years was a car salesman, and they were a wild bunch, man. They were all just constantly on coke all the time. My roommate was a real man whore. I saw him like 4 or 5 times bring home girls that he sold cars to in the middle of the day, go into his bedroom for an hour and come back out, and they leave. constantly always on drugs. And at least in his situation, I don't know how all car dealerships work. Please, if you are a car salesman in the chat, let me know, how it works. But it's pretty much just commission. And I remember my roommate, he would have months where he was fucking loaded. Sold 12 cars, made $20,000, and then he'd go 3 months making zero. So it's like, I remember a few months he struggled to pay rent. He goes, I just didn't sell any cars. And you don't get paid otherwise, but if you sell a car, you're going to make the commission on that car, or you're making, and make the price on that. And then, of course, all the car salesmen are in competition with each other. So if a customer pulls up, there's like a bum rush of car salesmen to get to them, and it was just all really weird. Some months you did great, some months you didn't make shit, and it seemed like it was a really difficult job to be able to budget unless you are a really good one. Unless you're a really good car salesman with some tenure, and you've put 10, 15 years into the dealership and people know you, and maybe your money is a little bit more stable. But it just seemed like when I lived with a car salesman, he was all over the place with his finances. So I just hope that Marco Stunt is able to maintain the positive energy that he has with this job, and some of maybe the frustrating parts or the difficult parts of the job, he doesn't let that get him down, because what's really standing out about him is his attitude. And he seems very, very eager to work, eager to learn. So let's hope that translates into the dealership and his bosses see that, and he's teachable, and he understands things, and he's not a dumbass, and he does well. I think he will. Marco Stunt's a good dude. So all the best to Marco Stunt. Selling cars, selling Fords in Mississippi. If you live in Mississippi and you're in the market for a Ford F-150, come on down to What the Fuck Ford and see Mr. Stunt. Fun size, Mr. Fun Size. Ask for Mr. Fun Size. Fun shit. Good for him. Good for Marco. All right, well, let's start talking about, now that we busted out some news, let's talk about last night's SmackDown. Pretty okay show, I thought. I didn't completely hate SmackDown last night because we saw some big things go down. We're going to talk about what you see right there in just a second. But the show opened up with a big Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre promo. Incidentally, that match is now set for Saturday night's main event as well. It's going to be Cody and Drew for the championship. So they have their little promo deal. They say their piece. Drew McIntyre on the outside, he gets attacked by Jimmy Uso. There's a big pull-apart brawl involving these guys, and one of the security guards was Doug Mallow, and he is the guy that jumped in the ring and saved Psycho Stu from Raja Jackson at that Knox Pro Wrestling show a couple months ago, or whenever that was, that we talked about in detail here. So he was the one that potentially saved Psycho Stu's life, and it was cool to see him getting some extra work here as a security guard in that big pull-apart. But that was done to set up the main event match. Was going to be a no DQ match. This was set up backstage with Aldis and Jimmy and Drew and whatnot. It's going to be a no disqualification match in the main event, Jimmy Uso versus Drew McIntyre. After that, we had the MFTs. They got a win against Rey Fenix and yet another tag team partner, Shinsuke Nakamura. So Phoenix seems to be teaming up with everybody in the company other than the one guy he should be. And they took a loss to the MFTs. And then it was time for Tiffany Stratton to face Kiana James. So it's Tiffany versus Kiana one-on-one. Tiffany beats her rather handily. Immediately after the win, Julia is in. She attacks Tiffany, and then Jade Cargill comes out to make the save. Now, we haven't seen Jade since she suffered that big gash over her head, which is still there and not even close to here. That thing is so wide and deep, it may never go away, and I feel bad for her. But she shows up to make the save. She runs off Julia and Kiana and then raises the hand of Tiffany Stratton and then levels her with a sick clothesline, takes Tiffany out, an absolute brutal beatdown on the outside of the ring, throws her over the table, and then brings her over to the steel steps, lays her leg on it, and kind of like stomps her knee. And so Tiffany has been taken out. Her knee has been injured, and Jade Cargill has turned heel. This was a heel turn that was desperately needed, and I think it was a perfect timing of the heel turn, especially since she's working with that big scar over her eye right now. And now that she took out Tiffany and her knee, I feel like Jade Cargill winning the championship at Saturday night's main event is absolutely going to happen. I think we're going to have Punk and Jade both walk out as new champions on Saturday night's main event, and I would do it. I would do it now. Jade is a heel, winning the title, finally giving her that run 2 years after she got there, and she could probably carry it into WrestleMania and drop it to someone. Maybe Bianca Belair. Bianca Belair is going to come back, and Jade is going to be champion. That's going to present some interesting things, I think, on SmackDown. So now that Jade Cargill is a heel, I think that's perfect for her, and I hope that she does beat Tiffany on Saturday night's main event next Saturday, and I believe she will. Now, I currently am not taking off next week. I have to work, so I'm not going to be here to watch Saturday night's main event, but I'm probably going to have to come up here next Sunday, maybe ahead of the watch-along and talk about it. Yeah, I'm looking at my schedule now. Yeah, that's probably going to be what I do, as next week I'm going to be missing Saturday night's main event. I am working, so I'll figure out how we're going to talk about that, because it is next Saturday, right? October 1st? Yeah, or no, November 1st. But I expect Jade to win the championship, and I think she will, and I think she should. We also had, this was great, we had an Ilya Dragunov open challenge. Now, of course, he beat Sami Zayn last week to win the championship. So we have a brand new United States champion in Dragunov. He comes out there and he cuts a promo talking about his year off and, what he plans on doing now that he's back. And he is just such a beast. I think he should go on a run with that U.S. title, like how Gunther went on the run with the IC, and then eventually, we're going to get Gunther and Dragunov again at some point in some WWE pay-per-view, and it's probably going to be for a championship, and it's going to be badass. But Dragunov then, issues his U.S. Open Challenge, and it's answered by Aleister Black. Now, of course, Aleister Black won, I think, with the last man standing match last week when he had help from Zelina Vega. They have now finally paired Zelina Vega with Aleister Black. And we got to see the first entrance with the two of them. And it was so badass. Kind of Zelina kind of moving around on the ground like a snake around Aleister Black. Like, she adds a lot to that entrance. And I thought it was absolutely awesome. But it got me thinking about one thing. Like, I started thinking when Zelina was coming out, the only thing I could think about was fall and pray. Fall and pray. I was like, this is the same thing. This is the exact same thing. And it makes me, I put up on Twitter last night in a kind of a harmless tweet, but it's now since gone viral, and I hope people haven't misunderstood what I was trying to say. But when I saw that, I was at work, and I watched the entrance on my phone, and I was like, no disrespect intended, but why do you need Cross and Scarlett if you have this? Zelina's in the ring more than Scarlett. Most people might consider Zelina a better worker than Scarlett, and most people might consider Black a better worker than Cross. But you had fans screaming and chanting, "We want Cross," holding up signs, hashtags on social media, and they let him go right in the middle of that, right when the fan support for him was arguably at its highest. That's when they let Cross and Scarlett go. So basically my speculation was that I'm wondering if WWE knew that they were going to put Zelina and Black together. They knew this was in the works. They're going to do it soon. So if they're going to do that, why do they need two of these? Why do they need two of these acts doing the same thing? I mean, I kind of think it might be fun to have one on Raw and one on SmackDown, and then you build to a Mania mixed tag. If you have Cross and Scarlett on Raw and you've got Black and Zelina on SmackDown and they're both doing good, maybe Black wins the U.S. title, maybe Cross wins the IC or, I don't know, some shit like that, and they both have a lot of momentum, and then you have some sort of confrontation in the Rumble between all four. Like the Women's Rumble, you get Zelina and Scarlett in there. The Men's Rumble, you get Cross and Black, and then you book to a Mania match or something. Or you book a big super trio and throw Damian Priest in there, because I swear Priest and Black have that type of feud that makes me wonder if they could wind up an alliance when it's over. Forming either an alliance or a faction. Maybe Black says, hey, you basically started the Judgment Day when you attacked Edge. You've got every right to that name. And maybe they make a Judgment Day 2.0 on SmackDown. And then they add Ripley to their group. And then over on the Raw brand, maybe they add Stephanie Vaquer to theirs. And then eventually Dom and Liv break up, and Dom comes to the SmackDown group and reunites with Rhea Ripley. And then you build to some big match where the winner gets the rights and the ownership of the Judgment Day. So I don't know, something like that. You can do a lot of crazy shit. But when I saw that entrance, it just made me think of Cross and Scarlett. And I'm like, well, I guess I can understand that, because nothing against Karrion Kross, but I feel like Aleister Black is better than him in the ring, and maybe they're a better act to have, but Kross, is kind of better at the connection. Kross is very good at speaking. Kross, had that documentary and stuff. That's something that I can't see Tommy End or Aleister Black doing. I think Kross is better at that stuff. So it just made me wonder if that played into the WWE not wanting to re-sign Kross and Scarlett, because they're like, well, we already have one of these acts and we're just going to go with that one, which would kind of suck. But loved the entrance of Zelina and Black last night. That was great. Now, I thought maybe we would see a title change if it wasn't Dragunov in there. Like if it would have been Sami Zayn, I'm like, oh man, this could maybe be a title win here. But again, it was kind of predictable how this one would go. Zelina Vega winds up getting tossed out for trying to interfere, and that's when Damian Priest comes out. Priest, his music hits, and he starts coming down to the ring, and that was enough to kind of distract Black, allowing Dragunov to hit his Torpedo Moscow for the win and retain the championship. So the issue between Priest and Black is not over yet, and I'm guessing we're going to get one more match, and it could be as well on Saturday night's main event, because I think we only have 3 matches announced so far. And then finally in the main event, we had Drew McIntyre defeating Jimmy Uso in the no disqualification match. Really cool Samoan drop spot where Jimmy hits Drew with a Samoan drop through the table. And then Jimmy goes to the top rope to go for, I guess, a splash, and Drew grabs a chair and just throws it right in his face. And that allows Drew to hit the Claymore for the win. So there was a big post-match attack with the chair on the throat of Jimmy Uso. Cody comes out to try to make the save, but he ultimately gets Claymored, and Drew McIntyre stands tall. But I can't see 3 title changes on Saturday night's main event. We currently have Jey Uso versus CM Punk for the vacant World Heavyweight Championship. We have Tiffany Stratton versus Jade Cargill for the WWE Women's Championship, and we have Cody Rhodes versus Drew McIntyre. So I can't see Cody versus Drew getting a title change there. That would be one wild Saturday night's main event. And we're going to have a couple of matches added. So we might get Priest and Black one more time, I guess, and maybe on the Raw side they throw, I don't know, Stephanie Vaquer match on there or something. I'm not sure what they're going to do, but I feel like they're going to have to add at least one more match to that, maybe even 2, depending on how much time they have. Yeah, we will see. Yeah, and that's what we got for Saturday night's main event so far. But all we know is I'm pretty confident that CM Punk, if they put the belt back on Jey Uso, that's just going to be pure insanity. It's got to be Punk all the way on Saturday night's main event. All right, let me cruise to the chat here before we get into some Dynamite. I want to knock out a couple of super chats that are in here. If anybody hasn't smashed the thumbs up button, please do that for me. And if you're watching this on demand, like a lot of you might be, drop a comment below. Let's see, where'd that super come from? It was Tomas. Good to see you, man. Appreciate that $9.99. Hey, Greg, was in my best friend's wedding last weekend and fell behind, but both companies aren't doing much for me, so I put wrestling in timeout this week. Fair enough. The product needs to improve in both feds. Yeah, I feel like that too. If I wasn't doing streams and podcasts and stuff, I'd probably put wrestling in timeout as well. And when they're having like down times, or we're having periods of things not being that compelling, I don't overanalyze. You know, I really watch the Cliff's Notes versions of these shows. I get a general idea of what's going to happen, but I can't sit there and just watch and study every little minute of every match. I just don't have time for that, especially if the product at the current time isn't really setting the world on fire. So I totally understand completely, and I hope that things get better for both companies, because I have talked about, AEW having an opportunity here. Everybody loves an underdog, and WWE and this TKO merger and this greed and this arrogance and this shittiness this attitude that they have, towards the fans and towards everything. This is the time where another company needs to come around and take advantage of that, and them kind of being a turnoff to a lot of audience members. I'm like, why do they have to be purposely be dicks like that? Like, why do they have to be such assholes, So I feel like AEW's got an opportunity, and they should really be stepping up their game, and they're not. Dynamite wasn't bad on Wednesday. It's just you got to step up your game, and a lot of it isn't their fault. They're missing a lot of guys. But still, you got to step it up. You got to do something to make some noise and take attention away from these greedy pricks that are making our lives miserable. Tomas has got 5 more. Raw was even in my neck of the woods this week, and I opted not to go because these ticket prices are insane. I know, they are. I don't think I'm going to be going to any WWE shows again after Survivor Series, unless they're right here in San Diego and they're affordable and it's convenient. But otherwise, I don't think I'm going to be making any trips to go, and I probably won't go to Mania in Vegas, but you never know. That's still up in the air. We shall see. All right, well, let's move on to this week's AEW Dynamite, because it was kind of interesting. One thing I didn't like, though, is that at Wrestle Dream, we saw Hangman Page beat Samoa Joe, and then the Ops turned heel, right? And Joe took out Hangman, and then they aired the clip of after Wrestle Dream, Hangman, like in the trainer's room, pissed off, like furious, saying that he's going to ruin Samoa Joe's life. And then we didn't see him at all on Dynamite. As a matter of fact, the Ops opened up the show. It was a trios championship match against the Hurt Syndicate. So I'm thinking that Hangman Page is going to interrupt this thing and cost the Ops the titles. But Ricochet showed up. So the Ricochet and Demand against the Hurt Syndicate feud is clearly not over. And they show up there, allowing, right when MVP is trying to hit his finisher on Joe, that's when Ricochet shows up in his weird little shoes and his little tight pants. And it allows just enough of a distraction for Joe to lock the Coquina clutch onto MVP and get the win. So the Ops beat the Hurt Syndicate. They retain the Trios championships. Hurt Syndicate is now going to blame, Ricochet and go after him. And then Joe cuts a promo after the match saying that the Ops are not done with Hangman Page. Where was Hangman Page? Why was he not on the show? Why was he not out for blood? Why did he not run out here and attack? It was just so weird. But he's going to be on Collision tonight, so I don't even understand what that was about and why we didn't see him for the rest of the show. I feel like that was a big mistake. After that, Darby Allin came to the ring, and this situation and the issue with Moxley and the Death Riders is still not over. He gets in the ring, he cuts a promo for about 2 minutes, professing his loyalty to AEW, and says that he would die for this place. And he says that as long as the Death Riders are breathing, he won't be far behind. And we're going to talk about Moxley in just a second and what happened to him in his match with Kyle O'Reilly later on. But after that, we had a 4-way women's tag team match. This was Jamie Hayter and Queen Aminata defeated Penelope Ford and Megan Bayne, Harley Cameron and Willow Nightingale, and Sky Blue and Julia Hart. And so they are 4 of the 8 teams involved in the women's tag team tournament, which I'll talk about in just a second because they did reveal the brackets to us. But after that match, then it was time for Mercedes' celebration. So it was her big 12 belts Monet celebration. She picked up another one in Winnipeg. So she now has 12 championship belts. And Renee Paquette is in the ring, and she's in there with Puppet Monet. So Puppet Monet, or Puppet Mercedes, has made a return. She's basically doing the interview with Renee Paquette. This pisses off Mercedes Monet. She comes out with her big entrance, and she's got all of her belt boys lining the ramp with the championship belts. And I'm a little bit upset because I sent in my resume to be a belt boy. I had requested to be a belt boy. I sent Mercedes all my information and told her how good of a belt boy I would be. And so the fact that I wasn't called back, I can only assume that there's a problem with her cellular connection. But she comes out with the belt boys, one of which should be me, but she needs to pay her bill, I guess. But she comes out, she's all mad, right? And then she gets in the ring and she slams Puppet Mercedes' face into the cake that is there as the celebration. Seems like Mercedes has a celebration every week. And she then reaches under the table and grabs a hold of course, Harley Cameron, who was under there doing the puppet. And as soon as she grabs a hold of her, kind of like out of nowhere, I think when I watched the replay, it looked like she slid in from outside the ring. I thought she was under the table too, but Chris Statlander in a black hoodie shows up basically out of nowhere, grabs a hold of Mercedes, lifts her up and slams her face first into the cake, and then spins her around and hits her with a spine buster through the table. So Mercedes gets absolutely humiliated. She, of course, is going to be facing Chris Statlander at Full Gear for the championship. And after all of that happens, later on backstage, as Mercedes is complaining, she's approached by Athena, who's returned out of the blue. She's now been Ring of Honor champion since halfway through Obama's second term. Like, she's been champ forever. So she shows up and she pitches the two of them being a tag team and entering the tournament. Later on, they would show the brackets for the women's tournament. And here is what they look like. We've got Queen Aminata and Jamie Hayter taking on the Sisters of Sin on the same bracket. It's going to be Mercedes Moné and Athena versus Willow Nightingale and Harley Cameron. Over on the other side, you've got Riho teaming up with Alex Windsor. They're going to be taking on Toni Storm and Mina Shirakawa. And we have TJ taking on Penelope Ford and Megan Bayne. So when you look at that bracket there, it feels like it would be a Toni and Mina versus an Athena and Monet final, correct? But they haven't said where the finals are going to be. And since the tournament starts next week, the finals are probably going to be at Full Gear. Well, how is that going to work? Are you spoiling the outcome of one of these matches? Because we know we're getting Mercedes versus Chris Statlander for the AEW Women's Championship at Full Gear. So Mercedes is either going to have to lose in the semifinals or the opening round with Athena, or she's going to work double duty at Full Gear. Now, this is assuming that they crown the new champions at Full Gear, but I feel like they are. That's where you would want to do it, right? At Full Gear as opposed to TV. So I feel like it's going to be at Full Gear, but you already have Mercedes booked. So I don't know how all of that's going to work. Now, in terms of Mercedes' match with Chris Statlander, we have to remember that these two women faced each other last year at Full Gear, and they faced each other last year at World's End. Both really good matches. Both matches went over 20 minutes, and Mercedes won both of them. So, you know, one speculation that I had leading up to this, as I was wondering, is this going to lead to Mercedes Moné actually winning the heavyweight championship, not the heavyweight, the women's world championship, because she has currently 12 championships that she has won. And at some point, these independent promotions are going to need to get their belts back. In the meantime, the belts are getting great promotion. These are promotions that nobody has ever heard of before, and they're getting their belts on television, on cable TV. So for all the fans that think that Mercedes is holding everybody, all these anger boys who hate Mercedes, they're all the same type of boy, all the same type of guy, just chronic male loneliness at its finest. They hate Mercedes Moné. You don't see any women hating on her. You don't see any normal, happy, rational, free-thinking, men with a college education and who get laid regularly have any problem with Mercedes at all. It's just the one specific type of anger boy. You know who they are. And they're all like, well, she's going to have to go back and drop all these titles. And I've been saying since the beginning, since she had like title number 5, I'm like, there is no fucking way that Tony Khan is going to send out one of his top female stars on a losing tour to go hit 12 different promotions and lose 12 times in a row. For fans who think that's going to happen, get that out of your head. It ain't going to happen. She might drop a couple of them, but there's no way she's going to go take 12 losses. She's not going to go on a 12-loss road trip or road tour and drop all these titles. It's just not going to happen. Something else is going to have to happen instead. And one of the things I thought they could do is actually have her win the AEW title, and then once she does that, that's going to become her priority, and she's just going to relinquish all the other championships. But that would not bode well for the Anger Boys. They would probably have to be institutionalized at that point because they would not be able to handle it. And honestly, they're right. That is a little bit extreme. I wouldn't go that far with it. But when you look at the fact that Statlander has already lost to Monet twice, they're trying to establish Statlander as a top star in the company. This is a match she has to win. And it could be a great story for Mercedes as well because she's won everything else. She's won everything except one thing. She can't win that AEW title. She already had a shot at it and lost. Now she's going to have another shot at it and lose again. So that could be the story there where she, can't win that big one. So I feel like Statlander has to beat her, but maybe if the feud continues, Mercedes winds up winning the championship. Like, I think you have to have Statlander beat her. What I would do is I would run back what you did last year. I would have Statlander beat her at Full Gear, just like Mercedes beat her last year. Then I would run it back one more time and have Statlander win again at World's End. And then maybe in the beginning of 2026, then do one more match. And that's where Mercedes wins. And at that point, that's when she relinquishes all the other championships. But I don't care about the indie titles. She can forfeit all of those. I don't want to see the TBS title forfeited. She's held it this long. She's broken Jade Cargill's record. I feel like that title should be dropped. But it's going to be hard to do that if she's going to be losing to Statlander. I don't know how all of this is going to work. But it could result in her having another championship. Like if her and Athena win tag team gold, I could see them coming out of the women's tournament with titles. Athena and Mercedes, they would be pretty unstoppable. The two of them. But how is that going to work if the finals are at Full Gear and she already has a match booked at Full Gear? That might be one way to protect her. That could be one way to protect, in a way, Mercedes Moné. Because in the undercard, her and Athena can win the women's tag team titles, like maybe in the opener. Maybe the women's tag team title tournament final opens Full Gear. And it's Tony and Mina versus Athena and Mercedes Moné, and Mercedes and Athena win the tag team championships. Now it's Moné 13 belts, and she might have won another one by that point. So maybe it's Moné 14 belts, Moné 15 belts by that point. Now she's tag team champion as well, along with the TBS champion, along with the holder of 14 other independent championships. Anger Boys having full-blown aneurysms by this point. So the last thing that needs to happen is for her to then go later on in the night and beat Statlander. I think if she's going to work double duty, she wins the tags, loses the match to Mercedes. Loses the match to Stat. Because then Mercedes will be going into the match not quite 100% because she had a match earlier. Statlander takes advantage and beats her. And then maybe Mercedes gets a rematch at World's End, falls short again. And then you book one more match at Revolution, one final time, Mercedes' final shot at the title. You can frame it that way. And she wins. And then figure out. But by that point, now we're talking about another 3 months with all of these promotions titles. I don't know how far this is going to stretch. I don't know how long this is going to go. I don't know if it's going to be Mercedes 100 belts. Because if it's Mercedes 100 belts, that means she's going to need 100 belt boys. And I think that will really help my chances of becoming one. So, I'm kind of rooting for that because I'm not going to rest until I'm a belt boy. I deserve to be a belt boy. So that whole situation is nuts with the tag team titles and Mercedes and what's going to be happening there with her and Stat. But I'm loving Stat as the world champion. I think it's really important to establish her as one of your foundations. Now you got your Tony, your Mercedes. You establish Statlander. Try to get Jamie Hayter back on the map. Willow, again, is another one. I'd love to see Willow win some gold. And if there is going to be somebody who's going to take the TBS title off of Mercedes, I think it should be Willow. Willow won that. Didn't her and Stat trade the belt? Has Willow won the TBS championship? I feel like she has. I think she should win it again. Maybe she should be the one to beat Mercedes. We will see. Also on Dynamite backstage, the Young Bucks are banging on TK's door and they're demanding another match. So Tony Khan makes one for tonight on Collision. The Bucks are going to be teaming with FTR to take on Jet Speed and Jurassic Express in a $400,000 match. So another one of these random dollar amount matches. I don't know. Kyle Fletcher, he defeated Jon Moxley on Dynamite via disqualification because Moxley is completely, there's a chink in the armor here with Mox, and there's a story that they're telling, and now that he lost to Darby Allin at WrestleDream, he is extremely freaked out about submission holds, and he wants nothing to do with them. So he was losing his mind every time Kyle O'Reilly locked in any sort of submission. And then finally, near the end of the match, he's got like an ankle lock on Moxley. And Moxley does not want to say I quit or tap out. So he knocks out the referee, just punches the referee right in the face, and he gets himself DQ'd. So later on, the very next match was the Conglomeration. By the way, I love the Conglomeration sitcom intro video that they have. That is so great. Hilarious. Love that. So the Conglomeration then would defeat the Death Riders in a big tag, and Moxley is out there, and Darby winds up showing up with a baseball bat to run everybody off when Claudio was threatening to launch Orange Cassidy the same way he launched Darby. And Darby came in there to prevent that, and the Death Riders run away. So the fact that Darby was out there earlier on in the night cutting a promo about Moxley and about the Death Riders after he had just beaten him in that I Quit match, the fact that they are continuing this. They're continuing this. So much like the next issue I'm going to talk about with them continuing Fletcher and Briscoe, I can only see that meaning one thing. With what's the point of doing Darby and Moxley again? Unless you're planning some sort of major change in the Death Riders. Like the Death Riders faction has held on way longer than we thought. They're even adding members, when we thought they were going to be disbanding. And so why would they keep all of this going? And you combine that now with Moxley no longer being the champion, losing to Darby Allin, saying I quit, now turning into a paranoid freak every time he's in the ring and somebody puts a submission hold on him. He loses his shit. He's going to start to lose the confidence of his stablemates. And what I think they're probably building towards here is a potential turn on Jon Moxley. I think their Death Riders are going to turn on him. You got Blood and Guts coming up. That'd be a perfect place to do it. Shoot a big angle there, but something like that. Like, why would they continue having Darby out there? And I'm like, this might, and plus they're leaning so heavily into Mox, kind of losing his confidence, being freaked out, and that type of demeanor is going to wind up losing the confidence of the people who you are leading. And that's going to result in them eventually probably turning on Mox, I think. So that's going to be fun to see when it does go down. And another thing that might be fun to see is that when I was doing my WrestleDream predictions, I predicted that Kyle Fletcher would drop the TNT title to Mark Briscoe. I thought Briscoe was primed and ready for a feel-good moment here. He's got that great connection with the fans, very similar to Eddie Kingston, although except for that Briscoe is far more capable in the ring than Eddie Kingston, and I think he deserves to win that championship. But Kyle, kind of just won it as well. Some people argued that it was too easy or too early, I should say, to take the title off of him, and they were right. And I didn't have much confidence in my prediction at WrestleDream, but I still predicted Briscoe anyway, but he lost. But the fact that they had a promo here where Briscoe stuck around out there after the Conglomeration match, Kyle came out and Briscoe wants another shot at the title. And Callis tells him no. So that's his first response is no. I feel like this is going to be drug out and potentially they're going to book another match for Full Gear and he's going to win. Because if he wasn't going to win, why would you do it again? Fletcher and Briscoe had their thing. and Fletcher won. And so I kind of thought that was going to be the end of it. So I was delighted to see these two have an in-ring promo together on Dynamite, because that tells me there's still hope. And for me, really good hope, because I just can't see why you would do this match again just to have Fletcher win. So I think Mark Briscoe is going to win the TNT Championship, and he's going to do so at Full Gear. So we will keep our eye on that. That's going to be a great moment when that happens. I will try to make sure I'm home for Full Gear for this one, since I missed Wrestle Dream. And the main event on Dynamite was a great one. Kazuchika Okada and Bandito for the unified title. Okada retains. Tremendous match. So much fun. My current favorite ongoing story in AEW at the moment is what's going on with Okada and Takeshita. I love that. So the entire Callis family comes out to celebrate with Okada after the match, except for Takeshita, who comes out with his own entrance at the very end, standing at the stage, watching his family in there, has a little bit of a boo-boo face, but he is the current IWGP champion because he beat Zack Sabre Jr. a couple of weeks ago for that belt. So I cannot wait for this match to happen between Okada and Takeshita. It's going to be fucking beautiful. I don't know if I'd try to do it at Full Gear or if I just wait till World's End. World's End might be better. That's going to be good stuff. It's my favorite ongoing issue in AEW at the moment. And I'm loving it. You don't even, English is not these guys' first language. They barely speak it at all, but the stories they are still able to tell, and the intrigue that I have as a wrestling fan for these two guys is tremendous. I'm excited to see when this match happens. It's going to be all kinds of good. I'll be rooting for Takeshita, I think, when it does go down, but part of me wonders if Okada will win the first one. I don't know. God, him winning the IWGP title again would be wild, but might happen. But anyway, tremendous main event on Dynamite. I liked all of that, and I liked everything with Takeshita and Okada. I liked the Briscoe and Fletcher promo. I liked the stuff they were doing with Mox. I enjoyed the Mercedes Moné celebration. I enjoyed a lot of what I saw on Dynamite. The only thing I would have done differently is to have Hangman Page out there, because he was pretty pissed at Wrestle Dream, and then for him just to not be on Dynamite beyond what we saw in the beginning was just a little bit strange. Here's what we have for Collision tonight. We got that $400,000 match that I talked about. We are going to hear from Adam Page, so I don't know if he's going to be in the ring or if this is going to be another pre-tape. Also, it's going to be Pac versus Tomohiro Ishii. We've got Tekla taking on Mina Shirakawa. Brian Keith versus Ace Austin. We got Hook in action, and we've got an MXM TV casting call, which should be fun. So if you're a Collision watcher, I hope you enjoy Collision tonight. All right, and that pretty much is the end of my notes. I got to leave here pretty soon to head off to work, but I'll cruise over here to the chat, see if you guys have anything else fun to say. Colin Wright has got the $2 for us. Yeah, Abdullah the Butcher is seriously ill in the hospital. I did see that. The end is probably near for Abby, which is a shame. But, man, did he hang around there for a while. They even did a Dark Side of the Ring. Was it last season or the season before then on Abdullah the Butcher? What a wild career. But, honestly, I'm surprised he hung on this long. And Godspeed to him, man. Sucks. It sucks. Okay, the villain, I have heard that too. There are some people that are saying, hold on. Maybe it's not as predictable as we think that Punk is going to win the championship. It could be Jay winning the championship and turning on Jimmy Uso. And maybe Jay can become the new tribal chief. And then what do? You build for Jay and Roman at Mania? That could be good based on the history and the story between those guys. And I know TKO does love the bloodline, but I don't know, man. I don't know if I'd want to see that. I'd rather see Punk and Roman over Jay and Roman. But that is a possibility. I mean, hey, I'm kind of fine either way. But I think, have you seen all the dislikes WWE's videos featuring Jey Uso are getting? They don't seem to care about the dislikes, but they're there. Jay joining the Vision, Ryan Adams says. By the way, Ryan, thank you for those SmackDown updates last night. I appreciate that. And there is a Season 7 of Halloween Havoc. NXT Halloween Havoc is on right now. Also, I thought that was tomorrow. Is NXT Halloween Havoc tonight? I didn't write any of that in my notes. See, I don't watch NXT. Well, I'm going to get out of here then. So those of you who want to watch Halloween Havoc, it's time. It's on. What's the fucking card here? Let's look at this card. It's Ricky Starks and Tricky William. It's Tatum Paxley and JC Jane for the title. We've got Mr. Iguana and La Parka versus Javon Evans and Leon Slater. Ethan Page versus El Hijo de Dr. Wagner Jr. Hell yeah. Zarya versus Blake Monroe. And the Hardy Boys versus the Dark State, all taking place in Arizona right now. Halloween Havoc. I had no idea that was tonight. I thought it was tomorrow. Well, I'm going to go then in case you guys want to watch that. You don't have to worry about my ass. So anyway, enjoy Halloween Havoc and make sure you join us tomorrow night for Halloween Havoc 1989. We're going back 36 years ago. Tomorrow night, we're going to watch the very first ever Halloween Havoc. The card is bonkers, and it should be a lot of fun. So thanks again for hanging out with us today, guys. I appreciate it, and I'll be catching you tomorrow for the watch-along. Have a good Saturday. Peace.